Hello and welcome to the VKViewer 6 demonstration video about the repair list. When you launch VKViewer, you're always placed on the valve tree tab. If you want to work on the repair list, you either need to click the repair list button or double click what you want to see the repair list for here in the tree. If I double click training, I'm going to see the repair list for all of the plants inside of training. So I'll go ahead and do that to see all of the valves inside all of the plants for the owner of training. The repair list is essentially a spreadsheet or a grid configured by you of what you want to see. Inside of the grid, you'll notice that the valves are displayed in red or in black. The red means that the valve is past due for maintenance. This is the same idea as the ringing alarm clock inside of the tree. This grid is definable by me, and I have many ways that I can affect it. One of the most important things to remember about ValveKeep and VKViewer is that we're keeping track of your valve assets from cradle to grave. We have most recent and historical repairs to your valves, and this drop box here allows you to choose between them. Dropping down the most recent allows me to choose between most recent and all repairs, and this is an important concept. Most recent is the way that the valve is today in your facility, and historically all of the repairs can be seen by choosing all repairs. Notice here we have 938 in all repairs, meaning that historicals plus most recent total 938 events. And clicking back on most recents show me the 638 that are the valves the way we have them in the field today. This is an important concept and critical when you're doing analytical commands. Taking a look at all the repairs in 2008, for example, will be greatly affected depending upon you're in most recents or if you're in historicals. The other two drop boxes on the left hand side allow me to choose between the owner and the plant that I'm currently looking at. Right now I'm taking a look at training and I'm taking a look at all plants for it. I can drop that down and choose any plant that I want and I have interest in. Across the top left, I have the ability to change between the different equipment types. Right now I'm in relief valves. I can switch to control valves, line manual valves, or electric actuators. These other buttons here allow me to investigate the repair that I'm currently on inside the grid. If I click on the lifeline, I will see the lifeline of that valve. If I click on the parts, images, generics, I will see that data item for whatever repair I'm specifically on. So here I'm on PSV1. If I click the images, the tab will open up with the image command available to me. Same with generics and the to-dos. Those are all specific for the repair that I'm on in the grid. This repair data, these columns that I'm looking at, they come from what's called the details form. The details form is accessed by clicking the details button, and when I access the details form, I'm presented with all of the repair data that has been input about that one specific repair. You'll notice the tabs across the top take me through the work step process flow inside of the GTC or mark. If I take a look at any given tab, you'll notice we have the ability to see the as received and the as shipped information about the valve. So the details form is where you go to investigate the specific repair data about your valve. I will close out of that tab and I will continue taking a look at my grid. The columns that we have chosen are selectable by me. Here in the columns in grid command, I have the ability to choose on the left hand side from the 300 to 400 fields available to me inside of the specific repair equipment type that I'm on. If I come in and I take a look at the M's and I choose manufacturer and I add it and then I click apply, I will now have manufacturer added to my grid. There it is. I can squeeze the column widths, giving me a better visual idea of what is going on with my data. So that is how you add columns to the grid. I can find anything that I'm interested in inside of my grid by clicking the Find button, and now I can find inside of my current grid, and I can choose one of the columns that I have. In this case I'm going to choose tag number, and I'm looking for PSV-641. I will go ahead and click first. I notice that VKViewer has moved me to it, and there it is inside of my grid. That's how you go about finding a specific item inside of your grid. We can also apply filters, which are much like find, but they're different in the sense that we then limit our grid to what it is that we were looking for. Here you'll notice I clicked in the column header of serial number in the filter box for serial number column header. If I type in TT0, what I'm going to do is apply a filter to the serial number field showing me only serial numbers that have TT0 inside of them. So there is the 12 items that have that. So this is very similar to find, but it actually limits my grid as opposed to just moving to the valve inside of my grid that I had interest in. Across the left-hand side, I have other buttons that allow me to access reports, allow me to send an email. Let's say, for example, I had a question about something I'm currently sitting on inside the grid. I can go ahead and I can click the email button, and that will bring up an email with information from the valve that I was on in the grid, or the image that I was on in the grid, or anything else that I was on, and it will send it to the customer service rep at the local repair facility that has been associated with the owner and plant that I'm in. That's the email command. We have all of the analytical commands down towards the bottom, and we will take a look at those in other videos. Let's go back up to our PSV Demo 1, and let's go ahead and let's take a look at the parts for PSV Demo 1. So that one specific repair had a number of parts associated with it, and by clicking the parts button, I access the parts form. That is the grid list of all of the parts that were associated with that repair. Clicking on the details button for any one specific part shows me all of the detailed information about that part. I'll close up the details form, and I will close back out of the parts form. And as we saw earlier, the images and the generics work identically to that. Let's go back and take a look at our columns command. If I go back and I click on my columns in the grid, you'll notice that down here in the lower left area, I have the ability to save and load views. I can load a view in by clicking on it. So in this case, I'm going to take a look at my general view. And once it's loaded, I can go ahead and I can click apply, and my grid is populated with the way that I want to see it. Again, I'm going to quickly take a moment and I'm going to resize the columns in my grid so that we have a better view. And we're going to take a look at another little bit of functionality inside of the grid that is really cool. Here, beside the column headers, I have two buttons. The first button is a button that brings up a sub-menu that allows me to find, select the columns, filter, sort, and do a couple other things. Many of these are repeated over here. Beside that menu button is the Group By button. If I click the Group By bar button, the top of the grid has a bar where I can drag various columns up to it to view my data grouped in ways that I might want to find out information on it. For example, I might want to find out information about all of my valves by manufacturer. If I drag the manufacturer column up to the group bar, you'll see that I now have my data grouped by manufacturer, consolidated as 125 valves, or is about 19.5% of my valves. If I drag up another column, in this case service, I'm now going to group by manufacturer and then subgroup that by service. So again, I have my consolidated valves. Clicking on consolidated opens it up and shows me that I have compressible, non-compressible, saturated steam, and steam valves all inside of my consolidated manufacturer. So about 76 valves, or around 12% of my valves inside of my training, all plants, are consolidated and they are set on air or compressible. Clicking the Group By bar shuts off that function and returns me back just to my standard grid. Let's go back into the columns command and let's choose another column setup. Let's come down here and let's take a look at our received view. And inside of our received view, you'll notice that we have most recent, tag, cold diff, set, pretest, and some other information about the pretest. But I notice that one of the columns that I'm interested in is missing. So I will click in the available columns list, press the letter P to move down to the P's, and I'm going to find the pretest as a percent of cold diff test pressure. I'm going to choose it, add it to my columns, and I'm going to actually bump it up a little bit here so that it's where I want it. And I'm now going to click apply. That's going to set up my grid in such a way that I'm taking a look at all of my valves, set pressures, cold differential pressures, pretest pressure, the pretest as a percent of cold diff, and the pretest note, and the as found condition. This is a pretty interesting set of information about my valve. If I wanted to, for example, see all of the valves that had pretested outside of my set range of cold diff to pretest, I can go ahead and I can click on the column header filter, put in the asterisk, which is the flag item that I'm using for that, And you'll see that I am now limiting my grid to only the valves that pre-tested outside of my cold differential test pressure by 10%. That 10% was selectable by me. Removing that so that I see all of my valves, I might want to print a report of this. This would be a great view of all of my data that I have inside of VKViewer. Right now, I've got my columns set up in the widths that they are, and if I go ahead and I come over to my reports command, and I click on my grid report button, you'll see that I have the ability to include or not some of the columns. So I'm actually going to exclude the most recent from my report, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a report title of my as received valves. If I click on the generate, it will end up generating the report for me. It's sent out to a PDF, downloaded to my local computer, and I will go ahead and I will open it up and take a look at it. You can see that the column widths, as I had them in my grid, are reflected inside of my report, and I've got all of my valves displayed here with my tag number, serial number, cold diff, set, pre-tested at, pre-test percent of cold diff, pre-test note, and as found condition. A very interesting report, to say the least. I'll go ahead and I'll close out of all of that, bringing me back to my repair list tab. If I had too many columns selected, or if I had the column set too wide to allow that grid report to nicely fit on a single width piece of paper, I can either squish down the columns a little bit more, or I can change the font size that I'm using inside of my grid. Up here in my user preferences, I have the ability to click on the All Grids tab, and I can change my font size from 10 down to 8. Once changed, I'll click Save to save it, and then I'll come back to my repair list. You'll notice that this changed the font in view, but it also changed the font that I would use in my line grid report. Size 10 is great to look at on the computer. Size 8 works just as well for reports as 10. So that is one way that I can go ahead and I can allow more columns to be printed on a single width sheet of paper inside of my line grid report. That about wraps up our demonstration video on the repair list. Please check back for other videos of interest to you, and thanks for watching. Bye.